so thank you for joining us in person this evening. This is the fifth in a year-long series which was made possible thanks to funding from the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, the Pequot Opportunity Connection, the New England Foundation for the Arts, the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, Rhode Island Charge, and other anonymous funders and many community donors. If you would also like to support our programs like this or other Tomaquag educational endeavors, please visit our website. So just a quick reminder, please turn off any cell phones. Also, our restroom facilities are just outside this door, up the ramp to the next building if you need to use the restroom. And at the end of the session, Nakai will take any questions. So now I get to introduce, and it is truly my great pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. I'm just going to read his bio. So we welcome you, Nakai Northup. Nakai serves as head of education at the Mashantucket Pequot Museum, where he spent more than 10 years developing educational programs on Eastern woodland tribal history and culture for visitors of all ages. Nakai is the vice chair of the tribe's Natural Resources Protection Committee. He also serves as a board member on the Stonington Historical Society. And I loved reading this bio. I didn't know all of this about Nakai. As an avid hunter and fisherman, Nakai is a frequent speaker and lecturer on historic preservation, environmental indigenous activism, food sovereignty, and teaching traditional Eastern woodland histories and lifeways. Having both Mashantucket Pequot and Narragansett bloodlines, Nakai has spent his entire life on both reservations and is a passionate advocate and activist for Native American rights. With a strong love for his tribal communities and as a father of two absolutely beautiful children, Nakai is dedicated to preserving tribal histories and passing down cultural traditions to younger generations. And I can attest to Nakai's wonderful wealth of knowledge and just beautiful presentation ability. We recently took children to Mashantucket Museum, and he was our tour guide, and the children loved it, and I learned a lot as well, which isn't really surprising because I have much to learn. So with nothing more to be said, we welcome Nakai Northup.
Yanko and the Tusawis Nakai. That is hello and welcome in Pequot, and that welcome means come in a good way. I'm excited to be here today and spend time. This is something I've looked forward to for a while, and finally have the opportunity to come speak here, and plus be surrounded by a bunch of family is a beautiful thing. What I'm going to be talking about today is seasonality in a program that I developed called 13 Moons. And as of late, what I've been interested in as far as teaching wise is food, because not everyone likes books, not everyone likes to listen to me lecture for an hour, but everyone gets hungry and everyone needs to eat. And that's a good way to relate and teach people. So this program is going through seasonality and touching on some traditional aspects of our traditional calendars, using the turtle shell, which I'm gonna jump right into. So with that being said, the turtle shell. So this develops off of our creation story. We believe in Sky Woman up above us, and I'm gonna make this story really short. I've heard this story told over a matter of hours. I'm gonna give you guys the trailer version of this story. But going through, there was a storm in Sky World, and it created a big hole where a tree had fallen, and Sky Woman was curious, and she went to peer down and look at the damage and look through that hole, and she saw Earth. And at this time, Earth had no land on it whatsoever. It was a planet of water. And she was peeking down through that hole and started to fall. And as she was falling down, all the waterfowl, the ducks, the geese, and different animals slowly started to guide her fall and lead her down to Earth. And as she got closer to the water, a giant turtle rose up. and they placed her on the back of that turtle, and she called out for help from her relatives. So the sharks, the whales, the beavers, the otters, and the muskrat swam over and wanted to complete this task. And the whale said, you know what, I can do this, not a problem. I'm the biggest animal in the sea. And with one flip of his tail, went to the bottom of the ocean. But that whale has fins, so it struggled to pick up that earth. The task was to pick up some dirt, some mud. And the muskrat said, you know what, I can do it. And everyone kind of laughed and said, you're small and you smell funny. And he took a deep breath and he dove off the back of that turtle, and he swam down to the bottom, and with his little paw was able to grab that earth, that dirt, and bring it back up. And they placed it on the back of that turtle, and seeds were planted and land grew. And that's our quick, rough version of how we came to be here. And that turtle shell we use as a calendar today. Every turtle in the world, have it be a sea turtle in the Caribbean, a snapping turtle in our ponds here, or a tortoise in the Galapagos, is going to have 13 spaces on its shell and 28 spaces on the outer rim of its shell. And each one of those spaces to us represent a full moon. Something is ripe and ready to eat, or it's time to go do something. You have a task. And those 28 days are the timeline between each lunar cycle. And this isn't anything new. This is something widely used throughout indigenous communities and different regions. And this is something that I'm working on, trying to develop a bigger, more interactive calendar over at the Pequot Museum for us to be able to teach our young ones, because there's what's next. That's my passion. My passion is spending time with youth and talking with the youth, because when I was a kid, I always looked, and I was really fortunate with the elders I had and the people in my life who took time to develop me and invest in me. And I know that when I was little, I looked up to a lot of my big cousins, and now I get to be that big cousin to pass down and give opportunities to. So we're going to jump forward and talk a bit more about seasonality. So today we're extremely spoiled. We can go to the grocery store whenever and get whatever we want, and we can get something that isn't even indigenous to the area. It can come from any part of the world, and we have pretty quick access to it. We can go online and have it shipped right to our door. But traditionally, going by a seasonal calendar and waiting for these different items and gifts to come along, you had to be patient, but you were also extremely thankful when those items finally did come along. For instance, Blueberry Moon just passed. All our blueberries on res are ripe right now. My kids are having a blast, and we go out and we pick all the blueberries we can. And I have a full basket, and my kids have empty baskets and full bellies at the end of the trip. But regardless, we're out there getting it done. So we kick off our new year in the spring, new life, new year. So Sequan is how you say it in Pequot. And then we jump into summer, which Nippon. And in summer, that's when we're focusing a lot on fishing and harvesting our shellfish and quahogs. We're down by the coast. Pequot means people of the shallow water. We're a coastal people. Narragansett people strongly rely on the coast people of the small point. So it ties in, and I always tell people the best gift you can give someone, a Narragansett person or a Pequot person, is most likely some seafood. I don't give my mom flowers on Mother's Day or anything like that. I just try to show up with the biggest lobster I could find that day, and typically gets the job done. Taoki, which is autumn or fall, that's my favorite time of the year. Hunting season. I like the cool air. I like when the leaves change. And this time, me and my kids spend a lot of time out hiking, and you get to go look for mushrooms, and you're not dying of heat. And then Papoon, winter. My daughter just told me this was her favorite season, and my daughter spends every second of her life in the water. So I was like, you really like winter the most? You can't even swim. And she's like, yeah, but I get to throw snowballs at you. So I was like, eesh, I'm not ready for that one. So we're gonna kick off with March, the maple sugar moon, which is really big on the Pequot Res. We tap our own maple syrup each year. The operation is getting bigger and bigger each year. And the picture to the right is showing our sugar shack. That building has been standing for over 50 years now. It's been renovated as of recently, and then that second structure next to it is now what we just put up in the last year, a bottling and processing plant So if you go to Foxwoods and you have a stack of pancakes, you're gonna have syrup that we harvested right on our reservation, which is a beautiful thing. And in our language to say syrup, you say watapahik, which is sweet soup. And this, like I said, is growing more and more each year. We're tapping more trees. And we've had some great initiatives in the past year, having the public come out to be able to try our syrup. And we sell it at the gift shop at the museum. But the most important part is this is directly behind our Child Development Center. So this is a walk away from our young kids, and they get to be involved in that process year round, and they get to help tap trees, and then they get to see the whole process from start to finish. And like I mentioned, that's what I'm passionate about, is involving these young ones, because it's one thing to go to the grocery store and be able to pick your favorite snacks, but to know what section of the woods you can go and you can find a maple grove, or you can find a blueberry patch, and so on and so forth, really will create and make memories. And that's something that I remember from my childhood, are all the spots that my parents would bring me and my cousins would bring me to be able to provide sustenance for myself. This one I'm extremely biased as, and none of my older cousins in here can defend themselves, so I'm gonna say it. I'm the best fisherman in the family. And so, got that one out. Fish Moon is a great one, and to really kick off the year, the herring start to run up the streams, and we're able to go harvest these herring. Have a lot of Mashpee Wampanoag cousins, and I'm fortunate to be able to go up and harvest on their homelands as well. And they literally run by the thousands up these streams, and you stand in there with a net and scoop them up. You put them in a 5-gallon bucket. We harvest the roe, of course. We're able to eat the fish. My favorite way is a smoked herring, really hard to beat. And then some will actually take to prep for our gardens. So they're gonna go into the soil, and this fish is representing that new life, because that corn crop really changes everything for Indigenous people at a point in history when Indigenous women thousands of years ago in the Southwest were taking this tiny grass and domesticating it into what we know today. And over thousands of years of that work, corn is a crop that's in just about anything today, and really is truly embodies what Indigenous people rely on, and that's relationships. Corn is a crop that thrives better when it's grown with other plants. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters. That interdependence is what we rely on. Indigenous people thrive on community, they thrive on relationships. Independence and being set out on our own is really the worst punishment you can have as an Indigenous person. Isolation is not something we do well with. And so that process of community and community style living is something that we were practicing for thousands of years, and then being introduced to more of a European style of life where we were focused to be, mom, dad, brother, sister, you're in your home, you have to make it on your own, is something we haven't done well with. So I'm fortunate that I have an extremely large family, and anywhere I go, I see family. And throughout my life, growing up as a kid, I always had guidance from not just my mom and my dad, but having cousins upon cousins and aunties and uncles to be there to straighten me out if I wasn't acting right, or give me that extra push and motivation if I needed it. But Fish Moon, can't beat it. May, our corn planting moon. So as I was talking about the corn, we still plant traditional seeds on res flint corn. It's a drier corn as opposed to the sweet corn that we'll get in our markets today. It won't be really juicy when you bite it. We make a lot of Johnny cakes, and we'll grind it down, and that's a fun process for the kids to do on res. They kind of dread that day because they get sore arms having to grind and work the corn, but it's rewarding. The thing about going out and providing for yourself for sustenance, it's not easy, that's why everyone doesn't do it, but it's really rewarding. It's almost like the food tastes better because you got it yourself. But this process, May, we'll go and we'll get our mounds ready, we'll plant our corn, and this time we typically will sing some honor songs, and we'll all gather around and do it together. This is something, again, that you do as a community, you don't do solely by yourself. The first berry of the season, the strawberry. We typically all have strawberry Thanksgivings and harvest and festivals in this area to celebrate the first berry of the season. This strawberry represents a lot. It represents forgiveness, taking that time to acknowledge if you've had disagreements, if you've had problems with certain individuals, to take this time to, you know, open up your heart and forgive one another, because life is short. I'm 28 years old, and I've lost people who I wouldn't even imagine would be gone by now, but they are. And I haven't had the opportunity to say goodbye and things like that, so you never know. So always taking that time to let any soreness in your heart go and take that time to forgive is always a huge thing. And these are also another berry that you cannot leave around my kids at all. We had the garden at the museum this year, and we were doing our ceremony with our strawberries, and my son got loose in the strawberry patch, and we were picking strawberries for everyone to have, and he was just over there red-lipped, and he definitely got his hand caught in the cookie jar with that one. The blueberry moon, great time of year. Traditionally, this is actually a fantastic time of year to hunt bear. Bear fat is an excellent resource traditionally for our people, and this time of year the bear would be out roaming the low brush and eating these blueberries, and that fat from that bear actually gets sweet. It's great for sealing wooden bowls, but it's also great for cooking with. It's great for any like rash. It really works well with. I'm not brave enough to put it in my head, because I heard a story about my grandfather with a stick of butter, and I don't want to put bear grease all in my hair. But blueberries, we're doing a project this Saturday at the museum. Seasonal Saturdays is our initiative, and I'm going to be cooking a duck and making a blueberry barbecue sauce. And that's another thing I'm extremely passionate about, is cooking, because I'm extremely passionate about eating. And my family kind of set the bar really high on good food, so it's like you have to learn how to cook, because you can't just eat mediocre meals. So taking traditional ingredients and bringing it up into palettes today, and different flavors that people are comfortable with, is something I really love to do, making fusion style meals and just stuff you haven't heard of before. And this past weekend I ended up making some salmon with the maple syrup from the res and a can of chipotle peppers, and it came out phenomenal. And just taking the time, that's another thing, is having those young ones in the kitchen with you while you cook. I was always kind of the fly on the wall when my mom was cooking, and just watching that process, because that's how you learn. My daughter goes through it, she takes all the measurements with me. When it's time to cut, I give her little knife, and she takes her time, and you know, teaching them to be independent is a good task to do, and she's been doing it with me since she was tiny. She's always in it because food is her favorite thing. That's the way to my daughter's heart for sure. Skimitzen, green corn. So August being the green corn moon. This year, we're excited. It's coming up the last weekend in August, and I've been fortunate enough to be the arena director again this year, so I get to make sure everyone's behaving and having fun, which is always a task. And we get to celebrate with one another in August in this area. That's typically when most of the powwows are in southeastern New England. And we get to spend time and see faces we haven't seen all year long. We get to shake the rust off our knees, and we get to go out there and sing. So it's always a great time to celebrate that green corn. And the tribe just in the past couple of years got an agriculture department going on Res, where we're now producing produce for the community. We have a 525-acre farm. Under that umbrella is also the sugar shack with the syrup that I was mentioning earlier. We just opened a farm stand earlier this month, and it's full operation now, and we're able to grow food on our land to be able to feed our people, which is a really amazing process.
What's the name of the farm again? Is it like Mutual?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's exactly what it is. September, the harvest moon. September, great time of year. We're going to harvest most of our crops and get pretty much wrapped up and prepared for fall and winter at this time. This time is great for cooking because you have all your squash, all your beans. I have a Mexican wife, so beans kind of elevated for me in the past couple years because they eat a ton of beans and different corn dishes as well. And then I was introduced to squash flour, and being able to cook that squash flour, it's kind of a cheat code. You can put some cheese in it and fry it up. But just a great resource. And this time of year is also the kickoff to hunting season. September, early season archery starts for deer. So this is typically where I get and sneak out in the woods for a couple hours a day. And that's always something I'm excited for. October, those cranberries start to get ready and ripe. There's a few areas around here where we go and pick cranberries. Just a great resource. Blueberries and strawberries actually help thin your blood and keep you cool in the summer months. And then Creator always has a way, and that cranberry actually will help thicken that blood back up and get you warm for winter. And you know, eating these foods, food sovereignty is a huge initiative going around Indian country. And you know, knowing where your foods came from, eating foods that your grandmas were cooking, really is not only good for you, because all the processed foods and things that they put out today, our bodies aren't meant for. And Indigenous people suffer drastically from high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease. And you know, some keys to that was a form of genocide for our people, was taking away food sources. And saying, here, take flour, take some milk, take some dairy products, and from that we suffered. And reconnecting with those food sources is not only good for your health, but it's good for your spirituality and connecting you back to the land when you get food off the land. I always tell people everyone has an expiration date and we all go back to the land. So our ancestors quite literally are the land around us. And one day we'll be that land. So being a steward to it and taking the time to learn about it and care for it will pay tenfold in the long run. So this is where we're spoiled as the region that we live in. We get the true 4 seasons here, but we also get that foliage. We get to see those leaves fall. There's nothing I love more than in October, late October, early November morning, where the air is crisp and you get out there. And when I go hunting, I spend a lot of time in the woods, so I'll wake up pretty early and I'll get out there while it's still dark and just listening to the forest come alive as the sun rises. The birds start chirping and singing their songs. The chipmunks and the squirrels start running around and make your heart beat really fast because they sound like deer up until they're right up next to you. And then hopefully a deer walks by, but a good portion of the time it's just little squirrels messing with you. But just spending that time is priceless. This past year I was fortunate enough because I got my daughter out there with me for the first time to actually sit, because we did some practice runs and we sat in the woods where I wasn't expecting to see anything and where I was okay with her being a chatterbox that she is. And we did some practice runs and she got good at being able to sit quiet and whisper and sit still. So this year we went out this past season and we were able to get a deer together, and she was excited. I have an old crank meat grinder that you have to take and wind, and she loved it. She went through the whole process and grinding up and making burger and sausage and all that. It's her favorite thing. She was asking me after, I was like, is your arm tired? She's like, no, we can do some more. And we sat there and we packed out like 20, 30 pounds of burger in one sitting. But November, this time is also the time of year where the beaver's pelts are nice and thick. It's an ideal time to trap beaver. And on res right now, we have a bunch of beaver. So this next season coming up, I'll probably do a lot of trapping and have some beaver pelts. But they're sliding all over the place. We're doing a lot of scouting. Hunting is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I've traveled all over the country hunting. I spend a lot of time on the res hunting, and not a lot of people in my community hunt anymore in Mashantucket. but they all like the taste of venison. So the first year I get a year goes to the elders of the community, and of course, like backstraps go to Ma. But then after that, my Mima, my grandma, she always makes me bring her smoked sauces, and last year I didn't get any smoked sauces made, and I've been hearing it every time I've seen her since. So I'm anxiously waiting for September so I could just get a whole thing of smoked sausage from venison from her. But going through that process and being able to help provide food for the community as a whole is something I take pride in. For that same instance, I'm talking about eating those traditional food sources, and a lot of people have a weary feeling about wild game and the taste of it, but you take the time to butcher the meat correctly, and you go through that process, and it's top of the line stuff. All right, the Como, the gift-giving moon. This is one of my favorites, and my kids will definitely say the same thing, but they're the reason why it's my favorite. Getting able to spend time with family, Christmas being, the American holiday, is something that regardless, being able to see people happy and be able to spend time with family, any excuse to do it, we're gonna do it. And we have a market at the museum this time of year to be able to support Native vendors and allow them to showcase their talents. And that's a big thing that we take pride in, is trying to create opportunities for different Indigenous artisans and giving them a space to be able to thrive and be successful, because they're representing us every day. Every single piece they put out one day could be here in a museum, could be anywhere, and for someone to have it is definitely a gift. So traditionally it was called the wolf moon, but we don't have wolf here anymore. We have coyotes, and people say they're mixed in with wolves, and they call them coy wolves. But in January, when the nights get really long, wolves hunts were only successful around 20% of the time. So that means they're hungry about 80% of the time. So when those bellies are grumbling, they tend to let it out. Coyotes, they kind of yelp, and you guys have probably heard coyotes before. They go, and it sounds like laughter, so we call them tricksters. And I've had my fair share of interactions with coyotes. I've kind of waged a little war with coyotes in the past couple of years, because I got a deer last year, and I went to go look for it after like a half hour, and a coyote beat me to it. And ever since then, February, the snow moon, bear moon, the bears are full hibernation typically at this time. Bears are extremely amazing animals. They're animals that our ancestors took time to watch and survey, because these animals, we call them medicine animals, because they don't just eat meat. They'll eat meat, but they're going to eat berries, they're going to eat roots, and we would look to them to find medicines for our people, and they would be able to heal. So extremely passionate about them. Bears in this region, specifically by our res, we had one there last year, but our region, we don't have a big population of black bears anymore, but it's actually growing in the state of Connecticut quite a bit. And in the upper part of the state, there's a really good population of them. And that's something that I encourage. I want the bears back. The world not the world, but Connecticut in this area kind of has a funny view on bears, and people get scared of them if they see them in the woods. But if you walk in the woods, you shouldn't be surprised to see a bear. And so I'm excited for them to return home. The more they're here, that's just the more they're comfortable back on their homelands. And that's something we encourage. And then February is the month where we typically get the highest snowfalls in the year. And my birthday's in February, so I'm really partial. And that's where we're gonna wrap up. But going by these seasons and letting the moons and the seasons tell you what to eat, where to be, and how to spend that time is something that I've adopted in the past couple of years, more so, and it's something that's helped me with my mental health. It's something that's helped me spiritually, and it's something that's helped me physically as well. I kind of had a good push to do it. I tore my ACL, and I did it right at the start of COVID, which pros and cons. The pros was I got to spend the entire year with my son, who was just born, but it also gave me kind of the push to want to get back into this and start cooking and spending more time in the woods harvesting on my own. It's something that I was always around, it's something that was always present in my life, but these past couple of years, it's really kicked off more, and I've had the opportunity to do some cooking demonstrations for people. I'm actually like 75% done with a cookbook that's going to be coming out soon, and being able to do talks like this and speak on food sovereignty and seasonality is something that I've been extremely passionate about. I feel extremely humbled to have you all here today and be able to speak and spend some time, and we're going to open it up for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Nakai. That was excellent.
I told you.
And you were right. So, thank you, Nakai, for sharing your cultural knowledge and for your commitment to preserving this knowledge for future generations. And I should be able to say this without my paper, but I get so nervous and then my thoughts get jumbled, so it just makes sense to stick to my script. So I also want to thank all of you for joining us. Obviously, these events are not successful if we don't have someone to share this knowledge with. So thank you for coming out this evening and being with us. And I would like to invite you back next month. There will be a virtual presentation by Ramona Peters on August 4th. So you can check the website for that one. Be looking for that to come out so that you can register for that. Also, we also want to again thank our funders at the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, Rhode Island Charge, the Pequot Opportunity Connection, the New England Foundation for the Arts, and other generous funders and donors like you. And thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you again next month. Bye.